Good afternoon, Eric. How are you today?
Great. How you doing, Bennett?
Good, doing well. It's nice outside by me today. It was like in the 50s, which is like incredible. We had,
Pretty nice here in Atlanta also. A little
yeah,
cloudy.
okay, that's great. We were in the single digits over the weekend a couple of days ago, so it's
Yeah,
really
not
nice
our
to
world.
jump up like that. So it's exciting. I'm really excited to talk with you today about what it really takes from somebody, who's maybe contemplating going into entrepreneurship or really looking to start something. Maybe it's full time, maybe it's on the side, but take that mindset and really the logistics of what does somebody really need to do in terms of if they want to start from scratch or they're starting from scratch, or maybe they might have some skills and really look to make that transition. But before we get into that, I just want people, I guess, to know who you are, what you're doing. So if you can tell, I guess, the world or LinkedIn at least, what are you, what do you do, and how can you help, and what are you doing to help people really?
Sure. So I'm a business coach, and I run Bigger Cup Consulting. The primary market that I work with are C-level executives and founders at 10 to 100 person organizations.
Very cool.
That's really kind of the avatar of the client that does the best with me, and that's really the market that I know. I've spent my entire career working with startups and founders. And this is, the business coaching practice is really a continuation of that. I'm the rare business coach that's actually founded, run, and exited a successful business. I owned a recruiting firm for 11 and a half years. Exited that in 2019. We grew that to 40 employees. Pretty sizable operation in the digital media and online ad tech space. And business coaching is great. Gives me a different avenue to work with successful people.
Yeah, that's great. And it's interesting because I find with a lot of the coaches that I speak with, the things that they're looking to do and really tell people is like what their past experience was.
Yeah,
So like,
absolutely.
like you like literally got into business, built it up, so that like you've seen like the whole thing from beginning to end. It seems like, okay, this is like where you can actually help people. It's actually help them grow their businesses and really take it to the next level.
Yeah, I'm looking for me 5 to 10 years ago. That's the
Right.
that's the ideal client. And the only I would say 10 years ago I was probably not very coachable.
Okay.
5 years ago, after we went through a little bit of challenges, I realized that, hey, there's some things that I don't know. I did get a business coach for myself, and that was a very it was a career changing and personal changing experience.
Yeah.
So
And it's funny how like usually that ends up happening. People like will hire, let's say, a business coach just for business, and then somehow it ends up going into other stuff, deeper stuff, and really getting clear on our whys and understanding why we're doing certain things to really help us, do the things that maybe we're doing just because like we were put in a position, but then really looking to see, okay, what are really my opportunities? What are my goals? Maybe it's another business, maybe it's staying, whatever it is, but really having that person could be extremely beneficial. I definitely agree with that.
yeah, absolutely. It's, again, the focus is business. I'm not a life coach and I'm not a therapist, but there are always personal elements mixed in,
Right.
and what's going on in somebody's personal life affects their work and vice versa in
Yeah.
every case.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Yeah, definitely
nobody's
agree with that.
immune.
There you
So,
go.
but if you're, I guess, to segue in, I mean, if you're looking to go from being a W-2 employee to working for yourself, either part of the time or all the time, you have to get really clear on what you want to do and how you want to do it, what you have to offer the world, and be laser focused, because there ain't going to be any boss anymore telling you what to do.
Yeah,
So it much more falls on you to be self-motivated. So that's one of the biggest differences.
right. 100%. And especially in the beginning, when people are excited about the idea, they're maybe enthusiastic, like looking at all the possible possibilities that might be out there. But then what ends up happening is like, okay, I have to make calls. Who am I making calls to?
Yeah,
So
the reality sets in of
yes,
I had this amazing idea for this product or service, but and that it's going to be amazing, and you're thinking like 17 steps ahead, after it's a huge thing or something, whatever the goal is, and it frees you from whatever you were trying to be freed from. But like, there's a lot of work in between that is
yeah.
behind the scenes in every business.
100%. And it's interesting because one of the questions I recently got by people who are looking to get started in business is like, do they need to make an LLC? Do they need to have a bank account? Like on the one hand, they need to be like they want to like feel like a business, and maybe it's smart to do that. And on the other hand, maybe they just want to like start doing business already, and they don't want to wait for these things. And we're not giving legal advice. Speak to your lawyer and your accountant, of course. But like, what do you like? tell your clients, like when they're looking to start, like, do you need that stuff? Do you not need that stuff?
Sure. So I mean, when I started my business coaching practice, I knew that I was going to incorporate it, but it takes a little bit of time, and I didn't even have a name yet, and frankly, it just kind of snowballed, and I started telling people I was doing business coaching, and somebody said, "Okay, great. How do I pay you?" So I said, well, people usually just send me a Zelle to my personal account. So I did that for a while, until I got it
Right.
done the right way. Um, it depends on the nature of the business, obviously, but it's important to not get in over your head where you're not going to be able to reconstruct what happened pretty easily. That I think is the important part. You can always pay the taxes on it, and your accountant can deal with how to account for everything. But you just need to be able to to say what happened. So
Right.
once it's like, this person was a client and they also paid me back for babysitting. So they sent me Zells and I don't know what's for what. Like that's when you start to have a problem. So
Right.
the earlier you do it, the better. But at the same time, it depends. If you're starting a company that's small, like you don't want to go out and spend a huge amount of money on everything under the sun. There are tons of vendors that will sell you all kinds of services
Right.
that you really do need for a good functioning business. But the real essentials are just you need to incorporate, which you could do like on LegalZoom, or you can find an attorney to do it for to make an LLC. It's like $500 to $1,000 for everything included. You could do it yourself for like $200.
Right.
If you don't want to make any mistakes, it might be worth it. But find somebody else that who started a business. They can almost surely refer you to somebody. Once you have, it's just important to have the order of things mapped out. Incorporate a business, get a website if that's part of it. That's really simple to do. To reserve it, you can do that on GoDaddy. You can find tons of people to make websites for you that are amazing on Fiverr for very inexpensive cost. Just to get started, if that's not a core part of your offering, that the website is just your business card kind of thing.
Right.
So you just need to have all of these steps mapped out and make a list and make sure that you have somebody it doesn't need to be a coach. It could just be somebody that's an entrepreneur who's done it before that you can say, okay, what am I missing here?
Right.
But the bare minimum to get started is incorporate bank account. That's it, and make sure you have a way to accept payment. So you can get a Square. There's all sorts of payment acceptance methods that are easy and cheap. And in the beginning, the best piece of advice I can give anybody is don't overthink it and build this out as though it's already a $10 million company. This is just an idea that you're trying to make big. So start with the bare minimum and build as you go. You'll find people messaging you on LinkedIn to sell you all kinds of services.
Right.
That could be great, but you're just not ready for it yet if you're just starting. Usually it kind of comes down to getting your first sales and getting your clients.
Right. At the end of the day, you can have all this fancy stuff, but then if you're not making money, then you're not in business.
Then you're just paying $89 a month for this and $69 a month for that and $400 a year for this and a fancy CRM that has 2 people in it and you don't know how to use. All of those things are great tools, but get them once you get overwhelmed with your current systems. Most of the time, if you're just starting, you can manage you can keep track of everything on Google Sheets and Google Docs.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Comfortable with those.
Yeah. And I think it's important. And one of the things that you said at the beginning was when you started, you didn't want to get overwhelmed with all that stuff. So you started your business, you use Zelle, or you use PayPal or Stripe, whatever one of these things are. And get the ball moving. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a lot of times also we have a business idea, but then on the other hand, we're like, hey, is this actually going to work? It's not going to work. And we want to make sure it's even a good idea. So you're spending all this time and money and certain things, and maybe it's not going to work. So look to at least put yourself out there, look to reach out to people, because also once you start marketing yourself, it's not going to happen overnight. It could take weeks or months for you to actually get your first client. So if that's the case, also those things will come, and it'll be a great problem if somebody's like, I want to pay you money, and you're like, I don't know how to accept payment. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But don't let that fear hold you back from at least starting.
Right. Don't put it too far ahead and have that turn into a fear that gets you down and keeps you from starting what you want to start. Just one last example, when I started the coaching business, I didn't even have a contract. So I figured, okay, well, like that, it is important to, to make sure that everybody's on the same page about terms and conditions for pretty much any product or service.
Right.
But I figured, okay, I'll once I get a few clients, I'll deal with that. And that's what I did.
Right.
And so the first few clients I worked with, I didn't have a contract. And guess what? Nothing bad happened. And
Right.
it was a very small amount of risk.
Right.
So
yeah, 100%. I think also it's interesting that when we look to take action and we do things, like we have to realize, like if we would just be confident about it, like if somebody, like one of the fears is like somebody's like, oh, I want to pay you. You're like, oh, you just Zell me the money. And our fear is like that's still not professional. You know what I'm saying?
right.
But if you come off saying like, yeah, you just Zell me the money. And like you're just very confident
Like,
about coming, like they're like,
okay.
oh, okay, that's what I'll do because that's what I'm gonna do. And you're like, yeah, that's how I run my business. Like then it's not even like a question. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah.
you say like, I guess you can Zell me the money, or maybe send me a personal
And
check.
it's the same thing if you don't have a website yet and you decided that you're going to start before you do that, which is appropriate for some businesses. Just they say, "What's your website?" Say, "I don't have a website."
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Don't like be sheepish about it and say like, "Well, I don't know, I'm still working on it. I really should have one." Just I don't have a website. What do you want to know?
Right.
The more confident you are in whatever you're providing, the better you're going to be at selling it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the first part of starting a business is the sales front.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because like I think like when people ask me like, oh, do you have a business card? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, you don't have a business card? I'm like, no, just here's my phone number. If you have any questions, feel free to call me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's certain things that we think we need, but like those things hold so many people back because they think they need those things in order to start. But it's like just start and like you'll figure
don't
it
limit
out.
yourself by what you think you could need. Think about it from the perspective of the person who needs what you have to sell most. Do they care if you have a website? Is that going to help them? That website is not going to help them.
Right.
That's almost universal.
Right.
The business card also. I've got like stacks of business cards on my desk. These don't help me or anybody else. They're just a way to remember something.
Right.
So, and anybody who told me they didn't have a business card at the last trade show I went to, I took a picture of their badge in my phone. There's a way to do it. So It's not essential to anything.
Right, for sure. No, that's great.
We're talking right now. You don't even have a business card. I didn't even know that.
There you go, say. You mentioned sales briefly for a second. Like sales is one of those things that like people just get so scared of, especially if you're not in that mindset of in terms of like needing to sell something. And I was talking to a client yesterday and we were talking about how one of his fears is sales. And I was like, well, you're the owner of a business. You need to get you need to get used to it, right? And there's like so many different aspects of it. Number one is like, who do you call? Right. The second part is actually like literally dialing the number and pressing send. I feel like that is one of the biggest hurdles because once you press send, like, all right, is this guy going to pick up or not? And like, you got to like figure that out. And then you can figure out like, okay, what's the sales script? That's the whole point of it. Then we can talk about, okay, if they say yes, great. If they say no, okay, how can you loop them back in? If they say maybe, how can we like set up another call, whatever it is. And there's so many different ways to it. But like, what are some of your tips that you give people who are just starting out, who want to like start doing sales and they have to get comfortable with this thing that they're not used to?
So number one is you need to get really super clear on your target market and what you're selling. What is the product or service that you are selling and who are you selling it to? If you're not sure about that, then it's going to be very hard to get started because you're just calling anybody. So that's number one. Number two is what's the sales process going to look like? So is this a product or let's assume it's a service. Is this a service that's being sold over the phone? Is this something where you're pounding the pavement and walking into 50 doors a day? Those are very different jobs. Right. And they require a different mindset. You need more than one shirt if you're gonna actually go into somebody's office. What do you need to get started? And what is your day going to look like? And is that something you could see yourself doing? So where are your clients hanging out? Are you getting people through networking? Are you going to find them through online marketing? Are you going to find them like how are people going to hear about you? Right. That's like the most important part of the sales process at the beginning. If you're, I would say that most, certainly not all, but most new businesses, you're going to be calling people on the phone at least as a first point of contact. So you have to have some sales goals and metrics for yourself. And if you're not a natural salesperson, that's the most important thing is to just get the butterflies out of your stomach and just start. Like, just start going. I'm a salesperson at my core. I've always selling stuff as a kid, and like that was always like that's part of my DNA. But like I keep a clicker on my desk. There's no one who looks at it except for me. But I want to make sure I get a certain number of calls in per day and keep myself accountable. So whatever tool or trick works for you, that's important. Just lean into it and do it. Don't worry about how you're going to build out your whole sales team. These are all just wishes down. They're not real goals yet. In most cases, you're the sales team. So you are passionate about what you have to offer. Hopefully, if you're not, then you need to get passionate about it, because if you're going to have a very hard time selling something if you don't really like love it and feel like your target consumer really needs this and it's going to help them. That's what a great salesperson can do. A good, people oftentimes don't want to see themselves as like the stereotype of a used car salesman. But that's not what a good salesperson is. They are great. I know somebody who sells cars for a living who's honest and solution oriented and is able to get somebody the exact right thing that they're looking for. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And they pay them a lot of money to do it. But the sleazy used car salesman who will sell you anything, nobody likes that guy. Don't be that guy.
Right, for sure. And I think it's interesting because when people hear the word sales, they think, oh, I'm being manipulated, right? Like I have to manipulate people to buy my product. And that's not what you're trying to do as a salesperson. Like as a salesperson, you want to really help the person out. And if you have something that can help somebody and you're exchanging it for money, like there's nothing wrong with that if it can sincerely help the person. Even if you can use the sales techniques and strategies to make it more likely, and the language you can use, there's such a depth to what somebody can actually do. But just because you are asking somebody to buy something from you, just because there's money, people feel like it's uncomfortable. But like if you think about like when you go to a restaurant, there's no discomfort when you go to a menu and like, oh, I want this, and like at the end you pay your bill. Like it's not awkward. There's no weird exchange there. You know what I'm saying? So like when people are looking to sell a product or a service, like there's nothing wrong with asking, like, this is how we trade. Like we all have a certain amount of time, and we all have 24 hours in our day, and we're all trading our time for something, right? And we have to figure out what we're trading it for. So if it's for money, because I want to trade my time and this is my value that I bring to the marketplace, like you can take it, you cannot take it. You know what I'm saying? And like you said before, like nobody wants to be this sleazy car salesman, and you don't have to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could be.
Don't do that.
To help somebody. You know what I'm saying?
You have to see yourself as somebody who is offering something that's valuable in the marketplace to your customer, to your potential customer. That's essential to being a salesperson, and that means that sometimes, like, I'll tell somebody, honestly, I don't think that this service is right for you. I'm not going to take somebody's money just to close a deal.
Right.
I want to take the right people's money that I can actually help, and that's who's going to refer me to my next client. So don't worry about trying to sell people. If you're hard closing people, you're probably doing something wrong. You're selling the wrong service or product to the wrong person.
Right. And you can think about, like, if you have a product that's so incredible and you just talk about the product and how it can benefit them, like that's the
create awareness. That's it.
You know,
awareness, not numbers.
Exactly, 100%. And if it's worth it, then great. And if it's not, that's also great. And then, hopefully they can refer you to somebody, or just maybe down the line, it'll be, an appropriate time for them. In terms of marketing, okay, so I know marketing is like a big deal. You had a little experience in terms of the actual, behind the scenes in terms of ads and whatnot. But what's your advice for somebody who's like, where do I start marketing? Social media, not social media? Do I emails?
Sure.
Like, what's going on with that?
So again, it depends on that. It depends really heavily on your product or service. It's really focused. It's really dependent on the sales method first. If your customers are people that are only findable online, you need to find the best way to reach those people. You definitely need to have some sort of CRM after you get past the very beginning stages of your business. Once you can't manage everything on a Google spreadsheet, you need some kind of way to keep track of everybody. HubSpot, their basic plan is free. That probably will cover 95% of people and that we're starting a business. There's other tools like Pipeline. You could get lost in this, again, in the analysis paralysis of figuring out how to track your marketing and sales funnel for years. Just pick one in a week or less. Like look at the best 3,
Right.
talk to other people in similar businesses, and just pick one. But the main thing to figure out is again, what are you best at doing that nobody else can compete with? Why is your product or service the best? What's your superpower? What are you amazing at doing as a business owner, and that's going to be how you market it. In the beginning stages of virtually every business, you are marketing yourself much more than unless you have a truly unique product, then you're selling features and functions, but it's almost always very focused on you. You're usually the product. So figure out the best way to get yourself out into the marketplace, and don't just start buying services that promise you they're going to bring you leads automatically. That is possible, but it usually doesn't work.
Yeah.
Very rare.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like even like an Excel spreadsheet, like that's where I started. You know, it's like you just have a place that you could put names on. But I think the biggest thing with CRMs, and like this is where everybody gets caught, is like you actually have to use it.
Yeah.
Like it's nice like you have like a place where you can put people, and hopefully you actually put them in and you actually put their information in, and maybe you put in like what you actually spoke about in the conversation. But then it's like, no, then you got to do the follow-up, you know, then you got to reach back out in a couple of weeks, you know, and most people might have these CRMs, but they're just not using them. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
that, the reason is because most people, they never got used to seeing that as a requirement of their day-to-day. So the best advice I have, if you're already overwhelmed with your Excel spreadsheet or your Google sheet, you just got to pick one, transfer all your data in, and start now. Just start using it today.
Right.
You know, it's like a ancient Chinese proverb, like the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Second best time is today.
Yeah.
You know, so like just start now. But if you don't use it, it's not going to do anything for you. It's just going to be a weight and possibly an expense. So you have to use it. You can't keep everything in your head unless you have a photographic memory. Right. I can't tell you how many people I have heard from saying, I don't use a CRM. I know my clients. I just use my phone. They're leaving thousands or millions of dollars on the table by doing that. Yeah. You have to create systems for yourself that work with your particular strengths and weaknesses. It doesn't mean that you have to live in a CRM, but you may need to hire somebody who's a virtual assistant who can take all of these random notes, off of Evernote every day or whatever. Send them an email every day with here's what needs to be entered, and it spits back something that a list of people for you to follow up with today. You need to create whatever works for you, but you have to, once you get going, and you can't just keep everybody in your head anymore, which comes pretty quick, hopefully. You're going to need to think about, how do I organize this mess?
Yeah, for sure. And if you're not thinking on top of it, it's just,
yeah,
you have the information, like you have like the gold on you. You're just not utilizing it and realizing exactly what you have. So I think that's great. I know we have a couple more minutes, but in terms of like just like the mindset, because I find that there's so many people who get into like a business and they don't realize the like mental toughness that one really needs to be in business, because at the end of the day, like you're getting rejected more times than you're getting accepted, and that's tough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an understatement too.
Yeah. So like what I guess what advice would you give to somebody in terms of that? Like, how are you supposed to really look to be able to stick with it in the long run, knowing that it could be days, weeks, months of not like getting sales, but yet you believe in your product and you know that it can be successful?
So that's a great question. I would say in the beginning, the most important thing is to have goals and to make sure that you're keeping yourself on task with those goals. So they need to be, like, I use the SMART goals system, but pick one that works for you. They need to be, they need to be specific. They need to be measurable. They need to be relevant. They need to be, what does the T stand for? Time bound. So, and they need to be achievable. So those are, you can break down, okay, I want to make, $100,000 this year doing X. You can break it down to how are you going to do that? That's kind of your longer term annual goal. But in the beginning, the most important thing is focusing on activity, not on sales numbers. You can't control whether the first guy buys from you or whether it's going to be the 250th person that you talk to. So, but what you can control is your outbound activity. You have to be able to whatever you think is going to be the thing that propels your business forward. Do a lot of that thing and make specific goals and keep yourself accountable to them, or find somebody who's going to be an accountability partner with you in some way, shape, or form that you want to hold you to task. There's no boss anymore. So you just have to be able to push through. And the people who are successful doing that create systems for themselves to push through. Again, based on what works for you. Maybe you like to get up at 11 in the morning every day, and that's the whole reason why you're doing this. No problem. But you're going to have to probably work a little bit later than most people.
Right.
If you really want to be successful. Or you have to be very moderate in your goal, and you're not looking to have the same earnings that somebody else might if they're working more hours. There's no substitute, especially in the beginning, for just putting in the hours and doing what you think you're great at. That's what you need to figure out how you can do more of, and figure out how that jives with your personal goals. And then it's going to be tough to keep slogging through. And there's no entrepreneur that I've ever met that didn't have days where they're like, why am I doing this? I'm making less money for more work, and I could just go back to what I was doing before. And you have to either decide that you're going to burn the ships and you're not going to do that, and you're going to force yourself into, you quit your job, or you have to decide, with intention that you're taking a conservative approach and ramping this up while you're still a W-2 employee, which is also great. And that's what's probably best for most people. Make sure that you have a way to pay your bills. Don't get yourself into a situation where you're stuck and hard up for cash to pay rent, because that's not a powerful place to do business for anybody. So set yourself up for success, and make sure that you're creating a system for yourself that is gonna lead to success.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the emotional aspect is very emotional, because people are like, oh, I have such an opportunity and I hate my job. Like, what am I supposed to do? But you have to be realistic also. And, for some people, maybe burning the bridges is fine. For others, like
most people, it's not.
Yeah, most people, it's not. So unless you have, a place where you can actually support yourself with during that time, or somebody to help out during that time for the first X amount of months, make sure that you're just being realistic with that. And another point before we head off is that I love the fact that you said, you have to have your systems in place. And I always tell my clients, like, we have to set goals, but then we have to focus on the process more than the result, because so many times people are just only looking at the result, which is important. And we have to remind ourselves from time to time, whether it's once a week, once a month, whatever it is. But the process and the things that we're doing every day, that's what we really have to be focusing on. So even if
that's what you can control.
Yeah, that's literally the only thing you control. I remember, like, when I started my social media, doing all my social media, one of the things I was like, okay, my first goal is to get 10,000 followers on Instagram or something like that, right? And my coach was like, he's like, you can't control that. That's not something you can control. You can control posting 4 times a day. So maybe that should be a goal that you can actually do. And I was like, and it clicks. I'm like, oh, he's right. There's certain things we can control and certain things we can't control. But the things that we can control will hopefully get the results that we're looking to get. So what are those things? And making calls, that's number one. It's like, make calls, get in front of people, speak to people. That is the biggest thing we could do. But there are certain things that could really help move our business along. As long as we just say focus on those things, we'll be able to get the results and maybe even surpass them once we're looking to do that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Just push yourself, figure out what you do great, and figure out the small things you can start with today and dive in. That's the short version of this half hour. If you just joined us today.
There you go. Amazing, Eric. It's been incredible speaking with you. I learned so much. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
So biggercupconsulting.com. You can email me, Eric, ERIC, at biggercupconsulting.com, or you can call me 678-392-1432. I'm on LinkedIn. You can easily find me. I'm not hiding anywhere.
Amazing. Love it. Incredible, Eric. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll take the next one. If anybody is looking for a business coach, make sure to reach out to Eric. All the best.
Thanks, Bennett.